Hey folks, Radical Russ here, your red state refugee, and I've got to take a minute to talk a little bit about this video.
The game of football gave me a degree. I met my wife. I had a family because of it. It was my way out. But I also think that it's important for me to walk the line between being a football coach while also being a parent to a son diagnosed with C.T.E. Does it hurt that I lost my son? 100% it does. But I also will tell you truthfully that the game also gives a lot.
So this is a video that's out at the New York Times, and it's the story of this football coach. His son has been playing since he was 7 years old. By the age of 25, he has chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the CTE, that it happens because of the repeated collisions that these kids go through. Again, from Pop Warner age all the way through middle school, high school, college, and on to the pros. And it doesn't end well. The story doesn't end well. Uh, and I want to leave that part out of it just because it's sad, and I don't want to, capitalize on someone's, personal suffering in that way. But I think it needs to be said in our political environment right now that we have a double standard going on when it comes to what we're allowing kids to do. And specifically with respect to the gender affirming care for trans kids. And the arguments I keep hearing from the right have to do with, well, kids are too young to know what they're doing. Kids are too young to know the lifelong consequences of what they're engaged in. Kids are just too young to be able to take part in something that could possibly permanently damage them, permanently and inalterably change the rest of their life, change their bodies in a way that could be detrimental in the future. You hear that all the time from the right when it comes to the issue of trans kids and their health care. But you go watch that video out at the New York Times, go talk to the people that are dealing with the issue of CTE and the concussions that lead to it inexorably for these kids that are as young as 7, 8, 9, 10 years old that are playing football, that you can't cure it. There's no cure for the CTE, and we don't really know you have it until you succumb to it. And oftentimes it leads to these people in their 20s and their 30s committing suicide. We have the cases of the Junior Seau, for example, who blew a hole through his chest, specifically explaining in his suicide note that he wanted to leave his brain so they could study it, so they could figure out what was going on with this. And yet there are right-wingers all across this country, especially in Texas, that are going to go support those high school kids playing tackle football every Friday night. Now, lest you think this is some liberal that's trying to say, oh, we need to ban football. No, I love football. I think, hey, if you think your kid is old enough to make that decision to play football and you support your kid making that decision to play football, great. Let's let them play football. Let's just extend that grace to the parents of transgender kids too. You may not agree with it. You may think it's crazy to allow a little boy to become a little girl or a little girl to become a little boy. That might be insane to you. It's not your kid. That's the part that always gets me on this is parents. I don't have any kids, right? So I've got an unbiased view of all of you. You all raise your kids in some wacky ways. Some of you take them to churches all the time and indoctrinate them that they're at heart evil and must be saved by a supernatural force. I think that's wacky. You may think it's wacky to take your kid and put him in all sorts of protective armor and have him run headlong, head first into other kids and permanently damage their brains by the time they're 25 years old and lead them to be either suicidal or homicidal in some cases. A lot of these CTE cases, they see the players who, are abusing their spouses or their girlfriends or their other domestic partners. So let's just set a standard here. If we've decided that the kids are old enough to decide to change their entire possible life, their future, their body, and their identity by playing football, then it's all right to let the kids decide what gender they actually are. That's the rant.